In 1971, when Diana Ross walked down the aisle in a stunning white gown, millions believed she had finally achieved the American dream. But little did they know, right after that glorious moment came a series of tragedies, betrayals, and secret affairs that would stay hidden for decades. These never-before-seen private photos of Diana Ross will make you see the legendary star from a completely different perspective. From glamorous recording studios to rooms locked with unspoken emotions, her life was a whirlwind of shocks and many secrets that are only now coming to light. Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of tea, or just water, and sit back as we begin this journey together. Don't miss your chance to uncover the part of the story no one has ever dared to tell about one of Motown's greatest icons, Diana Ross. Born as Diane Ross on March 26th, 1,944 inches, the north end of Detroit, was the second of 6 children in a household filled with laughter, dreams, and the daily struggles of an America in transition. From a young age, Diana showed an unusual determination. She didn't want to be just one of them. She wanted to be the one everyone noticed. But life, as always, didn't hand out blessings easily. Her childhood in Detroit's North End began like any other until tragedy struck. When she was just 7 years old, her mother fell ill with tuberculosis. Though her mother eventually recovered, Diana's life was never the same again. Yet, what Diana sought was right in front of her. The Brewster Douglas housing projects where the Ross family lived were not just old brick walls, they were the cradle of big dreams. There, Diana became close friends with 2 neighbourhood girls, Florence Ballard and Mary Wilson. They sang, laughed, and dreamed together until Ballard came up with the idea of forming a girl group called the Pretties, inspired by the male group, the Primes. When they realised they needed a special voice to complete the trio, Ballard immediately thought of Diana. And just like that, Diana's musical journey began. They started performing all over Detroit, slowly winning over local audiences, and eventually decided to take things further by recording their very first single. During one conversation, Diana recalled her former boyfriend, Smokey Robinson, who at the time was working with the fledgling Motown Records, founded by Berry Gordy. With her sharp instincts, she asked Robinson to introduce their group to Gordy. Everyone thought this was their golden opportunity, but Gordy, ever the cautious businessman, wasn't immediately impressed. It wasn't until 1961 that he finally agreed to sign them on one condition. They had to change their name. That's how the Supremes were born. A name that sounded strong, commanding, and full of the power Diana had always craved. However, the early days were anything but easy. They recorded song after song, yet none became a hit. At Motown, people mockingly called them the no-hit Supremes. For many, that might have been the end of the road, but for Diana Ross, it was just the beginning. She practiced her vocals tirelessly, studied stage presence, and waited patiently for her moment. Originally, Florence Ballard was the group's lead singer, but Berry Gordy soon noticed something different about Diana. Her ambitious gaze, a voice that could silence an entire room, and a confidence that bordered on reckless. He made the bold decision to place her at the centre, a move that would change the group's destiny forever. In 1964, the Supremes made their mark with the hit Where Did Our Love Go? Launching a streak of unprecedented success, they became the ultimate symbol of the golden Motown era. Beautiful, elegant, and seemingly irreplaceable. But behind those radiant smiles, cracks were beginning to form. As fame soared, Diana Ross entered a dangerous relationship with none other than Berry Gordy, the man who had guided her to stardom. Gordy was married at the time, but that didn't stop Diana. She didn't just want to be loved. She wanted to be chosen. It was a passionate, secretive, and deeply calculated affair. Some claimed Gordy used Diana for his ambitions. Others insisted it was Diana who wielded her irresistible charm to secure her position. Whatever the truth, the result was clear. Diana became the centre of everything. She wasn't just the lead vocalist anymore. She was the face of the Supremes. Gordy even went as far as renaming the group Diana Ross and the Supremes, a move that deeply wounded Florence Ballard and Mary Wilson. Many believed Gordy was the puppet master behind all these changes. But those who truly understood Diana's ambition suspected she was the one pulling the strings. Motown's history was filled with stories of manipulation, love affairs, and betrayal. And within the Supreme story, fans and music historians alike pointed fingers at one person as the cause of the group's tragic downfall, Diana Ross. If Diana was the villain in this tale, then who was the victim? Sadly, it was the group's original leader, Florence Ballard. As Barry Gordy became increasingly captivated by Diana, he gradually pushed Ballard aside. Fortunately, she still had Mary Wilson, her loyal friend, who tried to keep the peace and inform Ballard of what was happening behind the scenes. But despite Wilson's efforts, the damage to Ballard was devastating. Heartbroken over losing her role and watching tensions rise within the group, Ballard turned to alcohol to numb the pain. Soon she began missing performances or showing up visibly exhausted. Motown labelled her as Trouble, and in 1967, Gordy officially fired Ballard, handing full control to Diana Ross. From there, Ballard's life spiralled into tragedy. She lost her money, her home, and eventually her life. Dead at just 32 years old. It was a heartbreaking end. But Diana's victory came with its own price. As ambitious as she was, Diana Ross had her limits. Meanwhile, Barry Gordy placed enormous expectations on her shoulders. The pressure became unbearable. She began eating less and developed a serious case of anorexia. In 1967, during a performance in Boston, Diana collapsed on stage and was rushed to the hospital for exhaustion. Yet, even after witnessing that terrifying moment, Gordy showed no mercy. By the late 1960s, the glittering aura that once surrounded Diana Ross and the Supremes began to fade into an identity crisis. The polished pop sound that had made them the most successful girl group in the world was now losing its charm among black audiences who were turning to the raw, rebellious energy of soul and funk. Barry Gordy, the powerful Motown mogul and Diana's former lover, saw this shift coming. He wanted to preserve the group's fame while simultaneously building a new empire centred around Diana. That ambition led him to try to have his cake and eat it too, launching Diana's solo career while keeping the Supremes alive with a new lineup. He succeeded, but at a steep cost. The Supremes never regained their former glory, while Diana Ross shot to superstardom as a solo artist. Yet, the top can be a lonely place. Even after leaving the group, Diana remained haunted by the gaze of her audience. That constant demand to be perfect, glamorous, and never vulnerable. During one shopping trip to buy a birthday gift for Barry Gordy, Diana met Robert Ellis Silverstein, a polished and soft-spoken talent manager. In him, she seemed to find a new kind of stability. Robert was unlike any man she had known. Gentle, attentive, and patient enough to weather the temperamental moods of a weary star. Before long, Robert proposed, and they were married. But as Diana walked down the aisle, she was hiding a dark secret, one that would only be revealed years later. A few months after the wedding, Diana gave birth to Rhonda Ross Kendrick, her first daughter, whom the press lovingly called the fruit of love. Later came Tracy Joy in 1972 and Chudney Lane in 1975. From the outside, they looked like the perfect family portrait. A famous mother, a successful father, and 3 beautiful daughters. But inside their luxurious home, emotional distance quietly grew with each tour, each lonely hotel night, and each brief phone call across time zones. Diana lived more for the stage than for her marriage. As her music career reached its peak, Diana Ross turned her sights to acting, another of her lifelong ambitions and a new hope for Motown's expansion. In 1971, she portrayed the legendary Billie Holiday in Lady Sings the Blues. The role earned her a Golden Globe and an Oscar nomination, forcing Hollywood to see her in a whole new light. But fame, as always, proved fleeting. Her next project, Mahogany, 1975, in which she both starred and performed the title song, was meant to solidify her as the ultimate entertainment queen. Instead, it became a nightmare. Trouble began early when director Tony Richardson was fired, just weeks into production, and Barry Gordy, Diana's former lover, took over as director. Two massive egos, two people with a complicated history of love and power, now found themselves on opposite sides of the camera. The set became a battlefield of arguments, tears, and heavy silence. One day, Diana walked off the set entirely, leaving chaos behind. Motown was forced to use a company secretary as a stand-in to finish her missing scenes. When Mahogany premiered, the box office returns were decent, but critics were brutal. For Diana, it was a crushing blow to her pride. The woman who had once made the world kneel before her voice was now being mocked as Motown's plastic flower. Amid her professional turmoil, Diana's marriage also fell apart. Robert Silverstein filed for divorce in 1977 after 6 turbulent years. When asked about the reason, he replied simply, "Diana belongs to Motown." The remark, though harsh, was painfully true. Because even though Diana had broken free from Gordy, she was still a creation of his empire. By then, the music world had also turned its back on her. When Florence Ballard, the founding member of the Supremes, died in 1,976 inches poverty, thousands of fans blamed Diana. At Ballard's funeral, angry fans booed and jeered as Diana stepped out of her limousine. Many believed she was the reason Florence had been pushed out of the group and left to struggle. After the bitter divorce, Diana Ross lived alone for 3 years. When she finally began dating again, her friends were stunned because her new lover was nothing like Barry Gordy or Robert Silverstein. He was Gene Simmons, the wild-tongued, face-painted frontman of the rock band Kiss. A man who embodied everything chaotic, loud and rebellious that Diana Ross had spent her career trying not to be. In 1979, at the height of Diana Ross's fame, an encounter that seemed harmless at first became the beginning of one of Hollywood's most talked-about love scandals. Gene Simmons, the iconic bassist of the rock band Kiss, was living with singer Cher, Diana's longtime friend. In an act of innocent trust, Cher introduced Gene to Diana so he could ask for help choosing a special Christmas gift. But that single phone call set off a chain of temptation and betrayal. When Diana and Gene went shopping together, sparks flew instantly. Soon, the two plunged into a passionate affair. Gene's relationship with Cher collapsed, and the friendship between the two women ended in heartbreak. The press couldn't get enough of what they dubbed the love triangle of the 1980. Meanwhile, Diana and Gene ignored the tabloids and revelled in their 3-year whirlwind romance, appearing together at parties, exchanging intimate glances in public, and drawing both admiration and outrage. But by 1983, the fire burned out, and Gene walked away, leaving Diana alone amid a fading spotlight. 2 years later, fate intervened again. At a party in London, Diana met Arns Jr., a wealthy, adventurous, and refined Norwegian businessman. Unlike the complicated artists she had known before, Ara brought Diana a sense of peace she had long craved. He was a man who loved mountain climbing, valued discipline, and cherished family, qualities that deeply appealed to her. They married in 1986, and their union was hailed as a fairy tale between the Queen of M-Town and the Nordic prince. Sadly, after years of happiness, their story began to unravel. In 1999, Diana attempted a grand return to the stage with a reunion tour of the Supremes, the group that had first made her a star, but the project reopened old wounds. Former members Mary Wilson and Cindy Burdong refused to participate, citing unhealed scars from the disastrous 1983 reunion. Back then, during Motown's anniversary special, Mary Wilson had done the unthinkable. She stepped on stage before Diana took the lead vocals and even introduced Barry Gordy, the founder of Motown, something traditionally reserved for Diana herself. It was a silent but dramatic act of defiance, a stage rebellion that left Diana visibly furious. Only skillful post-production editing kept television audiences from witnessing the full confrontation. In 1999, Diana Ross was determined to revive the legendary Supremes, the group that had once catapulted her to global stardom. But her dream of a reunion quickly fell apart when the two original members, Mary Wilson and Cindy Burdong, declined the invitation. Left with no choice, Diana turned to Linda Lawrence and Cher Payne, singers who had only joined the group after she'd already left. The public, however, showed little enthusiasm. The much-hyped Return to Love tour, expected to be a triumphant comeback, turned into a disaster when ticket sales were so poor that several shows had to be cancelled midway. The press was merciless, calling it the most forgettable comeback in Motown history. No sooner had her professional life crumbled than Diana's personal world collapsed too. That same year, Ara Nest Jr., her wealthy Norwegian husband, the man she once believed to be her final home, shocked everyone by announcing, "We are separated," during a live TV interview. The cruel twist. Diana herself had never heard those words from him. In that moment, she knew her marriage was over. The heartbreak sent the once glorious diva spiralling into alcohol and drug use. Friends later recalled seeing her with a hollow, distant stare, as if all meaning had drained from her life. By May 2002, Diana checked herself into a rehab facility, desperate to regain control. But just 3 weeks later, she left prematurely to resume her concert tour. A tragic mistake. Her body wasn't healed, her mind still fragile, and she soon turned back to alcohol as a form of escape. A few months later, in August, she returned to rehab, only to walk out early once again. Then fate struck harder than ever. In December 2002, Arizona police pulled her over for driving the wrong way down a one-way street. Her blood alcohol levels stunned everyone, 0.2%, more than twice the legal limit. To make matters worse, Diana wasn't even touring at the time. She was vacationing at the luxury Canyon Ranch Resort. The tabloids erupted with sensational headlines. For the first time in her life, Diana faced jail time, 48 hours behind bars. Though just 2 days, those hours changed her forever. The Queen of M-Town, once the woman who made millions swoon, now sat alone in a cold cell, stripped of fame, makeup, and illusion. But it was there, in that silence, that Diana Ross made herself a solemn promise. She would never let her past consume her again. But fate still wasn't finished with her. In 2004, Ara Nest Jr., her former husband, the man she had once mourned losing, was killed in a mountain climbing accident in South Africa. He was an experienced adventurer, but that day, a faulty piece of equipment led to a fatal fall. He was 66 years old. When Diana heard the news, she broke down completely. Years later, in tears on the Oprah Winfrey Show, she confessed, "Arnie was the love of my life. I will never be able to love anyone like that again." That loss reopened old wounds from her first marriage to Robert Ellis Silverstein. At the time, Diana had been pregnant with Rhonda, and Robert believed he was the father. But in truth, Rhonda's biological father was Barry Gordy, the founder of Motown and the man who had once shaped Diana's rise to fame. Fearing the scandal would destroy both her career and marriage, she kept the secret for years. But secrets rarely stay buried forever. When Rhonda was 6, Diana and Robert divorced. It wasn't until Rhonda turned 13 that Diana finally sat her down and revealed the truth. Your real father is Barry Gordy. Instead of resentment, Rhonda felt relief as though a long-standing mystery had been solved. She had always sensed she was different from her two younger sisters, and now she knew why. Rhonda continued to call Robert the father who raised me with love, but she also developed a warm, respectful bond with Barry Gordy. Remarkably, all three maintained a relationship of mutual respect, something almost unheard of in the world of show business. Decades have passed, and Diana Ross still takes the stage, her eyes shining, her voice no longer as powerful, but richer, filled with depth and emotion. At 80 years old, she still performs, still smiles, and remains a symbol of resilience. She has 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and continues to be celebrated as a living legend. The life of Diana Ross is not just a chronicle of fame and glory. It is the story of a woman who fell many times but never stayed down. After failed tours, heartbreaks, addiction, and devastating losses, she always found her way back to the stage. Microphone in hand, her voice, once doubted, once dismissed, now stands as proof that legends aren't born from perfection, but from the power to rise again after every fall. Oh no. Heat